I could get sued for even telling this story. But I'm tired of staying silent. My name is Emily. And this is how I lost everything. My job, my friends, my peace of mind. And yet, this is also how I found something far more powerful than any paycheck. My voice. 6 months ago, I was just another face in a glass tower in Midtown. The kind of person who shows up 10 minutes early, brings extra pens to meetings, and still says thank you to people who talk down to me. I worked in the marketing department of a well-known tech firm, let's call it Novacor. If you Googled them, you'd find buzzwords like inclusive, innovative, a great place to grow. But behind closed doors? It was a jungle. And at the top of that jungle stood a man named Michael Rains, our VP of marketing. Smart, charismatic, ruthlessly charming. He had the kind of smile that made people lean in and a temper that made people scatter. To the outside world, he was Novacor's golden boy. To me, for a while, he was just my boss. And I was fine with that. Until I wasn't. I joined Novacor 3 years ago, fresh out of grad school, full of energy and that ridiculous optimism you only have before your first corporate betrayal. I was hired as a junior brand strategist, which in plain English meant, you'll be doing half the work for a third of the credit. But I didn't mind. I was young, hungry, grateful. I stayed late, worked weekends, brought ideas that turned half-dead campaigns into six-figure wins. Michael noticed. At first, it felt like progress. He called me into meetings with directors. He asked for my input. He even sent me a handwritten note once. You've got real instinct. Keep going. I remember pinning it to my corkboard like it was some kind of corporate love letter. It wasn't. Looking back, the signs were always there. The compliments that lingered a little too long. The accidental touches. The way he once stood behind me while I was working, close enough for me to smell his cologne, and said, "That dress really brings out your eyes, Emily." I laughed it off. Because that's what we're taught to do, right? Laugh it off. Don't cause drama. Don't be that girl. I told myself he was just being nice. That I was overthinking it. That this was just how men in power acted. And then came Jenna. Jenna was 23, fresh from undergrad. With bright eyes and the kind of nervous energy that makes you want to hug someone. She joined our team as a marketing intern for the summer. I liked her immediately. She reminded me of me just 2 years earlier. Hopeful, kind, a little too trusting. One Thursday around 7 p.m., I was still in the office finalizing a pitch deck when I heard a voice from the hallway. It was Jenna. She sounded off. When I walked out, I found her by the coffee machine, hugging her arms. Her face was pale. "Emily," she said, voice trembling. "Can I talk to you about something?" That conversation changed everything. She told me Michael had been asking her to stay late, alone. He'd commented on her clothes. Told her she was too pretty to be stuck behind a desk. He'd invited her for drinks off the record. And that night, he'd cornered her in the hallway and tried to kiss her. My blood ran cold. I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't lying. She was scared. Embarrassed. And worst of all, blaming herself. "I didn't say anything because I didn't want to ruin my chances here," she whispered. That sentence broke something in me. Because I knew exactly what she meant. I told her she wasn't alone. I told her this wasn't her fault. And I told her, if she wanted to file a report with HR, I'd go with her. We walked in together the next morning. Sat down. Told them everything. The HR manager, a woman named Linda, nodded sympathetically. Took notes. Thanked us for being brave. And said they'd look into it. For a few days, it was quiet. Too quiet. Michael stopped showing up to our floor. Meetings were canceled. There were whispers. Looks. Then, the following Monday, I got called into HR again. "We've received concerns about your conduct, Emily," Linda said, her voice oddly flat. I blinked. "I'm sorry." She folded her hands. Several team members have reported that you've been spreading unverified rumors and creating a hostile work environment. I stared at her. You mean supporting someone who was harassed? She didn't flinch. We're terminating your contract, effective immediately. I laughed. Out loud. Because surely this was a joke. But when I turned around, I saw the security guard waiting outside the door. And that's how I ended up in the parking lot, cardboard box in hand. Wondering how the hell doing the right thing had become the thing that ruined me. I didn't cry. Not in front of them. Not even when I reached my car and sat there, watching my reflection in the windshield like it belonged to someone else. But once I got home, alone, in my one-bedroom apartment with its half-dead fern and 3-day-old takeout, I fell apart. I lay on the floor for hours, still in my work clothes, box of office junk beside me. No job, no references, no explanation. Just one sentence looping in my mind. They fired you for telling the truth. The next morning, I woke up at 11 a.m. Not because I wanted to, because I had nothing else to do. My inbox was already filling with company-wide emails announcing my departure. They used that word, departure, as if I'd booked a vacation. As if I'd chosen to go. There was no mention of why. No acknowledgement of Jenna. Just a sterile goodbye note I hadn't written. Then came the texts. From coworkers. Some confused. Some fake concerned. Hey, heard you left. Everything okay? Did something happen with Michael? Just curious. HR said it was a conflict of personality. Sorry to hear. Anyway, hope you're good. And then silence. Nobody stood up for me. Not even the people I used to get coffee with every morning. Not the ones I covered shifts for. Not the women who once told me I was brave for speaking up in meetings. They vanished. Just like that. The real world doesn't pause when your world falls apart. Rent still came. My student loan bill still came. And all I had left was a LinkedIn profile that now made me look difficult. Because here's the truth no one likes to say. Speaking up makes you a liability. I thought about staying quiet. I really did. I thought about walking away, finding another job, burying the story. But then Jenna texted me. It was short. Just 5 words. He's still doing it. My stomach twisted. She'd tried to keep her internship. Tried to stay quiet. But he was still calling her in late. Still making comments. Still acting untouchable. And that's when I realized. If I walked away now, he'd win. And worse. He'd keep doing this to other women. Maybe dozens more. No one was coming to save us. So I decided. I'd save us. I didn't have a plan. But I had my memory. I had my receipts. I had every email, every calendar invite, every Slack message. And I had nothing left to lose. So I started collecting. Quietly. Carefully. I went through my personal laptop, found every interaction I'd ever had with Michael. Downloaded every file I had access to from my time at Novacor. Made notes. Timelines. Patterns. And then, I reached out to every woman I'd ever worked with at that company. Some didn't respond. Some sent polite hope you're well messages. But one night, I got a DM on Instagram. From a woman named Priya. She used to be on our design team. Had left a year earlier, no goodbye, no explanation. Her message read, I heard what happened. I believe you. And you're not the only one. Priya agreed to call. Her voice was low, steady, and tired. The kind of tired that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from being ignored for too long. I left because of him, she said plainly. Michael. He made my life hell. I told HR, twice. They said there wasn't enough to pursue a formal complaint. So I walked away. I felt my jaw clench. How many other people do you think he's done this to? I asked. Priya paused, then said something that stuck with me for weeks. Emily, men like that don't just do it. They build systems that protect them when they do. She was right. This wasn't about one man and a mistake. This was about a machine. A machine that let him get away with it. again and again. And it was time to break it. Over the next few weeks, I worked like a woman possessed. Every day I woke up, made coffee, opened a massive spreadsheet I'd built, and documented everything. I had internal emails between Michael and interns, filled with jokes that didn't read like jokes. Texts from former employees showing after-hours messages and drinks invitations. Screenshots of deleted Slack threads. A copy of the HR handbook, and all the ways it was violated. And I had names. 6 women. All of whom had experienced the same patterns. All of whom had tried to speak up. All of whom had been ignored, silenced, or pressured to let it go. Jenna, Priya, Camille, Rachel, an intern named Zoe, and me. We called ourselves the 6. It started as a group chat, then turned into weekly Zoom calls, then turned into a plan. We were going to expose him. But we knew we couldn't do it through internal channels. Novacore had already shown which side it stood on. So we went external. I reached out to a journalist I used to pitch stories to in PR. Her name was Tasha King. Independent. Fierce. Known for breaking stories on workplace abuse and corporate corruption. I sent her a heavily redacted summary of our experiences. Within an hour, she replied, "Let's talk. Confidentially. Off the record." We set a meeting. That call was 3 hours long. Tasha listened. Asked questions. Took notes. She didn't flinch. She didn't doubt. At the end, she said, "If you ladies are willing to go on the record, this could blow up. But I won't pressure you. You'll lead. I'll write." And just like that, it was real. But with that choice came fear. We knew what this meant. Our names. Our faces. Our reputations. We were about to step into a storm that could destroy us. Some of the women hesitated, and I didn't blame them. They had families, jobs, people depending on them. I almost backed out too. Until Jenna called me. She was crying. "He did it again," she whispered. To a new girl. She just joined last week. I think she's only 21. That was it. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about justice. This was about stopping a predator. We all agreed. We would speak. On record. Together. The article dropped 2 weeks later. Headline: 6 women accuse Novacore VP of sexual harassment. Company accused of systemic cover-up. And beneath it? Our names. Our stories. Screenshots. Evidence. Quotes. Timelines. The article went viral in under 24 hours. Twitter exploded. LinkedIn turned into a war zone. Novacore's public email inbox shut down from the flood of messages. Michael's LinkedIn disappeared. Novacore issued a bland, 3-line statement about taking these claims seriously. But we weren't done yet. Because the real twist? We had a video. The video wasn't long. Just under 3 minutes. Grainy. Captured from a hidden conference room camera, one that most people forgot even existed. It showed Michael standing too close to Jenna, blocking the door, touching her arm as she clearly pulled away. And then, his hand brushing her hip. She froze. He leaned in. You couldn't hear what he said, but her body language said enough. She flinched. She stepped back. He smiled, then cut to black. Jenna had found the footage by accident. Weeks after her incident. She remembered a red light blinking in the conference room ceiling during the meeting. It took a legal friend of hers, some back-end tech magic, and a little luck to extract the video from the internal server cache. We debated whether to release it. It was raw, triggering, deeply personal. But in the end, Jenna said it best. If this stops him, then it's worth it. We sent it to Tasha. She verified it, ran legal checks, and posted a follow-up story. Title: Exclusive. Leaked footage shows Novacore VP in harassment incident. This time, it wasn't just Twitter. Mainstream news picked it up. CNN, The Guardian, BuzzFeed, everywhere. The pressure exploded. Protests formed outside Novacor headquarters. Employees began sending anonymous tips to reporters. 2 board members resigned. And then finally, Michael Raines was placed on administrative leave. Not fired. Not investigated. Just leave. But we weren't surprised. Companies don't admit guilt. They manage optics. Still, we felt the tide shifting. People were listening. Articles were being written. Other women from other companies began reaching out. This wasn't just a story. It was a movement. Until my phone rang. Blocked number. I picked up. Emily. A familiar voice said, calm and cold, "It's Michael." I froze. "I suggest you stop this now," he said, his voice sharp as glass. "You think you've won, but you don't know who you're dealing with." My heart pounded. My hand trembled. "You're done," I said quietly. He laughed. "Am I?" he replied. "Or are you?" Click. That night, my email was hacked. My Instagram was flooded with anonymous threats. Someone posted my home address in a Reddit thread. Old photos, private ones, appeared online, tagged with fake captions. It was coordinated. It was vicious. It was war. Jenna called me crying. Someone had messaged her parents. Told them she was a liar. A slut. Said she was ruining innocent men's lives. We reported it all. Nothing happened. We knew who was behind it. But he was smart. He used proxies, fake accounts, legal threats. Michael had power, connections, and now he was using every weapon he had left. But what he didn't know was, so were we. Because we weren't just telling our stories anymore. We were gathering others. Camille had a friend in the compliance department, someone still inside Novacor. She sent us files, memos, buried complaints, internal emails where HR discussed minimizing exposure. The cover-up was worse than we thought. It had gone on for years. Emily wasn't his first. Jenna wasn't even his fifth. There were dozens of cases. Some quietly settled. Some deleted. The company had protected him. We had proof. We were just about to go public with it all. Tasha was prepping a third, explosive article. Bigger than anything we'd shared so far. It would name names. Show receipts. Shatter Novacor's image completely. But then, Jenna disappeared. It started with her not responding in the group chat. Then she missed a Zoom. Then 2 days passed. Then 3. We called. No answer. Texted. Nothing. I drove to her apartment. The lights were off. Mailbox overflowing. Neighbors said they hadn't seen her in days. Her phone? Disconnected. It was like she'd vanished. And that's where part 1 ends. Not with a victory, but with a question. What happened to Jenna? And more importantly, how far would Michael go to protect his kingdom? He found me. 3 words. Heavy as stone. Sharp as a scream. I read them over and over again, willing them to make sense, to have another meaning. But deep down I knew. Michael had gotten to her. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling, thinking about all the times Jenna had said she felt watched. The shadows she'd seen outside her building. The black car she'd noticed in her rearview mirror 2 nights in a row. We'd told her it was stress. We wanted it to be stress. Because the alternative was unthinkable. But now it felt real. I grabbed my laptop. Pulled up everything I had on Michael. There were over 200 documents in my folder. Emails, meeting records, deleted calendar invites, and 1 folder Jenna had made, for backup. Just in case. I clicked it open. Inside were 2 video files and a PDF titled, Names. I hesitated. A part of me didn't want to see what was in there. Because I knew, once I opened that list, there was no turning back. So I did. And what I found was so much bigger than I expected. It wasn't just women from our company. Jenna had been talking to people outside Novacor. Former employees. Contractors. Interns who'd worked there 1 summer and never came back. There were 12 names. 12 stories. All different, but all pointing to the same man. And the same cover-up. Some were silenced with NDAs. Some were threatened with lawsuits. Some, like Priya, just disappeared without a word. And it had been happening for years. This wasn't just a story about Michael anymore. This was about everyone who'd let him get away with it. And suddenly, I understood something chilling. If Jenna had found this before she vanished, maybe that's why she vanished. The next morning, I went to her apartment. I knocked. Nothing. I buzzed the neighbors. One elderly woman answered, peeking out with cautious eyes. "You looking for the girl from 3B?" I nodded. "She left in a rush. Day before yesterday. Middle of the night. Black SUV picked her up. She looked scared." "Did she say where she was going?" The woman shook her head, but then said, "She dropped this. I found it in the hallway." She handed me a folded note. No envelope. No name. Just one line. Written in shaky handwriting. "If anything happens to me, go to 162 Orchard." I didn't hesitate. 30 minutes later, I was outside a rundown office building in Lower Manhattan. It looked abandoned. But inside, on the second floor, behind a door that looked like it hadn't been opened in years, I found her. Jenna. Alive. Shaken, but alive. She'd been hiding, living with a friend. No phone. No internet. "I had to disappear," she whispered. "They said they'd destroy me. My family. My life." She was pale. Tired. Barely holding it together. But when I told her what I found in the backup folder, her eyes lit up. "You saw the names?" I nodded. And then she said something that gave me goosebumps. "I wasn't just collecting stories, Emily. I was building a case." I wasn't just collecting stories, Emily. I was building a case. Jenna leaned forward, pulled out an old shoebox from under the couch, and began to unload its contents. Flash drives. Printed emails. A burner phone. A worn leather notebook covered in tiny, frantic handwriting. "This," she said, holding up a USB drive, "has internal memos from Novacore's HR system. Things I wasn't supposed to see." I stared at it. "What kind of things?" She hesitated, then plugged it into her laptop. The files opened slowly. Almost too slowly, until they revealed a web of documents that made my stomach twist. Settlement agreements. Confidentiality clauses. Legal memos referencing harassment complaints, with Michael's name redacted. In every single case. Some were marked as handled internally, others as risk managed. There was even a draft email from a senior executive suggesting, "Let's avoid external noise. These things blow over if we don't feed them." "They've been covering for him," I whispered. "For years," Jenna replied. "They knew," I said. "They always knew." Jenna nodded. "And if this gets out, they're finished." We sat there in silence for a moment. The weight of what we had pressing down on both of us. Then I asked, "Have you shown this to anyone?" Jenna shook her head. "Just one group. A nonprofit called Women Forward. They help whistleblowers build airtight cases against corporate abuse. And they want to help us. But they said we need more. More witnesses. More evidence. More pressure. Pressure. That I could do." Over the next week, we got to work. Jenna reached out to Women Forward's legal team. They began preparing a case. Quietly. Meticulously. Meanwhile, I turned to the one thing I still had control over. This story. If Novacore wanted to kill this from the inside, we'd light the fire from the outside. I started by reaching out to Tasha again. Told her everything. She agreed to meet in person. No emails. No trace. We met in a bookstore cafe, sitting across from each other behind stacks of true crime novels. She listened. Took notes. Didn't blink when I told her about Jenna's disappearance, or the internal memos, or the threats. When I showed her the redacted settlements, she leaned back and whispered, "This isn't just a harassment case anymore. This is a corporate conspiracy. She looked me in the eye. If we do this, we go all the way. You ready? I didn't hesitate. I was born ready. We planned the drop like it was a military op. 3 parts. 1. The story, a full exposé on Novacore's culture of silence, backed by documents, interviews, and leaked memos. 2. The names, a follow-up article naming executives who signed off on internal cover-ups. 3. The video, released across social media with the hashtag #SilencedByNovacore. Launch date, 2 weeks. Codename, full exposure. We knew they'd try to stop us. So we scattered the files across secure backups, sent pre-scheduled emails, and encrypted everything. And then, just 3 days before launch, I received a letter. Certified. No return address. Inside? A cease and desist from Novacore's legal team, accusing me of defamation, corporate theft, and breach of non-disclosure agreements. The final line was underlined. If you publish this story, we will pursue full legal action against you and your co-conspirators. I read it once, then again. Then I lit a match and burned it in my kitchen sink. I guess we're getting close, I texted Jenna. She replied instantly. They're scared. Good. They're scared. Good. Launch day. It felt like we were preparing for war. My hands shook as I hovered over the send button. Jenna was across from me at her laptop. Rachel, Priya, Camille, and Zoe were all on a group call. Tasha sat with us in a borrowed co-working space downtown, her eyes locked on the draft of the article. 3, 2, 1, click. The email went out. The tweet was posted. The video dropped. And within 10 minutes, everything exploded. #SilencedByNovacore was trending worldwide. Influencers shared it. Celebrities retweeted it. Even a senator quote-tweeted the article with the caption, "This is exactly why survivors stay silent. And exactly why we need to listen." By noon, Novacore's website crashed. By 3 p.m., their stock dipped 17%. By 6 p.m., 2 executives had resigned. And Michael? Michael was still silent. That night, Jenna and I stayed up watching the coverage roll in. News anchors. Reaction videos. Think pieces titled, "The Rot at the Heart of Silicon Valley." Not just one bad boss, the empire behind the silence. But the one that hit hardest was a short blog post by a former Novacore engineer. It ended with this. "We knew. We always knew. And we let him get away with it because speaking up felt impossible. Until now." By the next morning, we were being contacted by lawyers, advocacy groups, whistleblowers, even filmmakers asking for rights to the story. We said no to all of them, because this wasn't about money, or fame, or revenge. It was about accountability. About making sure no one else would go through what we had. Then came the subpoena. The Department of Labor had launched an investigation. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission followed. Novacore was officially under federal review. Michael's assets were frozen. His travel was restricted. His face was splashed across every headline in the country. We should have felt victorious. But something still didn't sit right. One night, a message popped up in my inbox. No subject line. No signature. Just a link to an internal Novacore document. And a note. "You're only halfway up the ladder. Look higher." The file was a PDF. Confidential board meeting minutes, dated 3 years before any of us had joined the company. And in that file? A vote. Item 7B. Internal policy update regarding sexual misconduct protocols. The vote passed 8-1. The lone dissenter? Michael Raines. Not because he wanted better protections. Because he wanted more power to handle complaints internally. Without HR. Without external review. And the person who proposed the policy in the first place? Novacore's CEO, Margaret Fields. Suddenly, the picture changed. Michael wasn't a rogue predator. He was a tool. A weapon. And Margaret, the woman who publicly denounced toxic masculinity in corporate culture during a TED Talk just 6 months ago, had designed the entire system that let him operate freely. I felt sick. All this time, we were fighting a monster. But the monster had a master. Jenna stared at the file, then looked at me. "You ready for part 3?" she whispered. I nodded. "Let's burn the whole damn thing down." They called her the woman who changed tech. Margaret Fields, CEO, philanthropist, keynote speaker at every major innovation conference in the last 5 years. She had a reputation for being fearless, forward-thinking, and, according to Forbes, a champion for workplace equality. She was also, apparently, the one who built the cage we'd all been trapped in. The board meeting minutes proved it. She was the one who pushed for internal resolutions on misconduct claims. The one who proposed tighter NDA restrictions. The one who protected Michael under the guise of HR optimization. And worst of all, she had the nerve to go on camera just days ago and say, "We are deeply disturbed by these allegations and are committed to a full investigation." I watched that clip again. Her perfect posture. That smooth, calming voice. A snake in silk. Jenna and I regrouped with the rest of the 6. We laid out everything. Timeline. Names. Links between policy and outcomes. The rise of Michael and how he was weaponized to make women leave quietly. "This wasn't one bad apple," Camille said. "No," I replied. "This was a vineyard of rot." But we couldn't just accuse Margaret without something solid. We needed someone close to her. Someone who'd seen the real operations. Someone from the inside. That's when Zoe spoke up. She leaned forward and whispered, "I might know someone." His name was Darren Cho, senior policy analyst. Used to be in legal strategy. Worked under Margaret for 3 years before leaving abruptly last fall. Zoe had interned under him once. Said he was kind, honest. He'd warned her to stay sharp, and not everything here is what it seems. We reached out through an encrypted email chain. It took him 2 days to respond. His message? "Meet me." But no recordings. No phones. Just truth. We met Darren in a quiet park near the river, under a willow tree that swayed like it was hiding secrets. He looked older than in his LinkedIn photo. Tired. Like someone who'd seen too much and said too little. "You want to know about Margaret?" he asked. We nodded. He sighed. "Margaret built the system. Michael ran it. But everyone else? They enabled it." According to Darren, Margaret believed in risk management through containment. Translation? Don't prevent bad behavior. Just make it too expensive to expose. She created layers. HR filters complaints. Legal drafts airtight NDAs. PR spins everything into empowerment narratives. And when someone like Michael messed up, they didn't fire him. They promoted him. "Control the top," Darren said, "and the bottom will fall in line." He handed us a flash drive. "Everything you need is in there. But be careful. Margaret doesn't lose. She erases." That night, we opened the drive. And what we found wasn't just damning, it was systemic. Internal policy guides. Scripts for HR to discredit accusers. Memos between Margaret and board members strategizing exit solutions for complainants. One document was titled, "Reputation Protocol, Class V. Internal Uprising, Female Employee Leads." It was dated 6 months ago. It had my name on it. Reputation Protocol, Class V. Internal Uprising, Female Employee Leads. I stared at the document like it might catch fire in my hands. There it was. My name. In a corporate war plan. They had prepared for me. Anticipated me. Filed me under threat level, containable. A paragraph beneath my name outlined suggested actions. Monitor social media. Encourage discreditation via peers. Establish emotional instability narrative if public statements begin. It was all there. Before I even reported Michael. Before I even knew what was coming. They had a protocol for women like me. And I wasn't the first. I felt sick. I shut the laptop, stood up, paced the room like I was trapped inside someone else's story. Jenna watched me quietly. Then she said, "There's more." She opened another folder. This one labeled, "Watch Status, Tier 1, Potential Organizers." It listed names, photos, activity summaries. Camille, Rachel, even Zoe. The company had been tracking all of us. From the start. Who we emailed, who we texted, even who we were seen talking to at the office cafe. This wasn't damage control. This was corporate surveillance. My heart raced. My mouth went dry. I thought back to all the moments that had felt off. The way Linda from HR would accidentally show up wherever I was. The email that mysteriously deleted itself from my inbox. The time I found a new IT security policy installed on my company laptop. And then I remembered something else. A night months ago. Before everything began. I was walking home late after a client event. I'd felt someone behind me. Turned. No one there. That moment, too faint to chase at the time, now echoed like a siren in my chest. They hadn't just silenced women. They'd been watching them. I couldn't sleep that night. Every sound felt like a threat. Every shadow, a warning. I kept checking the peephole. Locked every window. Put tape over my webcam. For the first time, it wasn't just about justice anymore. It was about survival. The next day, Tasha called. She'd been reading the files too. "I don't think this is just a story anymore," she said. "This is a full-blown system of control." She paused. "And Emily, if they've done this to you, they've done it to others." She was right. It was time to go bigger. We needed a class action. One voice could be silenced. But dozens? Hundreds? That becomes a roar. We reached out to Women Forward again. They put us in touch with a legal firm that specialized in corporate corruption and data misuse. Their lead attorney, a woman named Marisa, read through the files and said only one word. Unprecedented. Then she leaned forward and asked, "Are you ready for war?" I looked at Jenna. Then at the folder still open on my laptop. My name, my photo, my life on their spreadsheet. I nodded. We're already in it. A month ago, I was standing alone in a parking lot, holding a cardboard box. Now, I was standing outside the United States District Court, with 5 women beside me, 3 attorneys behind us, and over 2 million people watching from around the world. The camera shutters clicked. The microphones surged forward. But for once, we weren't there to speak. We were there to fight. Officially, Emily versus Novacor Incorporated et al. A class action lawsuit. Filed on behalf of 24 former employees. And counting. Charges included workplace harassment, retaliation, wrongful termination, malicious defamation, illegal surveillance, and systemic cover-up. Attached were over 400 pages of evidence, screenshots, internal emails, financial transactions used to suppress settlements, and witness testimony. The judge accepted the case. Trial would begin in 90 days. The next morning, the headlines lit up. Whistleblower files massive suit against Novacor, CEO named directly. Harassment culture or corporate strategy? The empire of silence is falling. But Novacor didn't stay silent for long. Their PR machine roared to life. First came the official statement. "We categorically deny these baseless claims and will defend ourselves vigorously." Then came the media spin. They paid influencers to post about how cancel culture is out of control. They released a video of Margaret visiting a women's tech conference, smiling with young coders. They claimed we were disgruntled ex-employees seeking attention. But the world wasn't buying it anymore. We had proof. And more importantly, we had each other. Jenna and I were everywhere. We gave interviews. We spoke at rallies. We joined panels on workplace safety and corporate accountability. Each time we shared not just our story, but the stories of those too afraid to speak. Women send us messages from all over the world. Thank you. I'm not alone anymore. I'm still scared, but now I believe change is possible. And those words? They meant more than any court ruling. Then came the deposition phase. The lawyers called us in one by one. Each time, Margaret's legal team tried to break us down. They brought up our old performance reviews, our social media posts, emails taken out of context. They tried to paint us as emotional, unstable, irrational. But we were ready. We'd practiced. We had dates. We had receipts. And when they asked me if I had a personal grudge against Michael, I looked the lawyer dead in the eyes and said, "No. But I do have a problem with men who abuse power, and women who protect them." The room went quiet. Even their lawyer blinked. For a moment, it wasn't a legal battle anymore. It was truth. Pure, unfiltered, undeniable. Outside the courthouse, a crowd had gathered. Not just journalists. People. Workers. Survivors. Supporters. Holding signs. We believe her. Protect whistleblowers, not predators. Silence ends here. And as I stepped down those stone steps, into the chaos of change, I knew we'd already won. Not the case. Not yet. But the silence? It was broken. And that's how revolutions begin. The words sounded so harmless. Discovery. But in court, it means war. It's the phase where both sides must reveal every document, every message, every record that might relate to the case. It's also where secrets go to die. Our legal team worked around the clock. Thousands of pages, hundreds of hours of footage, archived memos, Slack exports, internal audits. Each file was a thread. And if you pulled hard enough, sometimes you found the whole web. One night, just after 2 a.m., I got a call from Marissa, our lead attorney. She never called at that hour. I picked up, half asleep. Her voice was tight. "Emily, we found something." I sat up instantly. "What is it?" There was a pause. Then she said, "It's a private email chain between Margaret and the board, dated 5 months before your termination." She took a breath. "And it mentions you by name. Specifically, how to get rid of you before you became a liability." The next morning, I saw it with my own eyes. Subject line: Emily Tran, potential exposure risk. Michael had never even bothered to learn my real last name. Margaret had written, "If she continues to build rapport with other female employees, she could become a rallying figure. Recommend strategic repositioning or performance-related removal before Q4. Another board member replied, "Michael says she's becoming defiant. Could be a problem." And then, "Let's make sure there's enough documentation to justify it, just in case." Just in case. It was premeditated. My firing wasn't a reaction, it was a strategy. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't emotional. I was targeted. For being strong. For asking questions. For refusing to smile and stay quiet. Marissa's team sent a motion to introduce the email thread into evidence. But within 24 hours, Novacor's lawyers pushed back with a confidentiality shield. They claimed the emails were executive privileged and not subject to disclosure. It was classic delay and destroy. But the judge didn't buy it. She scheduled a hearing. And then Margaret made her move. A letter, hand-delivered to my apartment, from Novacor's legal counsel. It said, "We are prepared to offer a confidential settlement of $2.8 million to Ms. Emily, contingent on withdrawal of all public statements and termination of litigation." I read it twice. Then I folded it, stuck it in my toaster oven, and burned it. Jenna watched the ashes curl. She didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Because here's the truth they'll never understand. I didn't want revenge. I wanted change. I wanted the next girl who walked into that office to not have to choose between her job and her dignity. And if burning everything down was the only way to build something better, then so be it. The courtroom smelled like old wood and cold air. Rows of polished benches. A judge's gavel. Tension so thick, you could almost taste it. I stood in the witness box. Right hand raised. Heart pounding. I do solemnly swear. Across the room, Margaret Fields sat with her legal team. Impeccably dressed. Unshaken. Expression carved from marble. She didn't look at me. Not once. But I could feel her watching, like a snake under glass. The prosecution began. Can you state your name for the record? Emily. And your former role at Novacor? Marketing strategist. What happened the day you were terminated? I told them. The meeting, the lies, the box in my hands, the silence that followed. I told them about Jenna, about the other women, about the night she vanished and the day we found her. I told them about the files, the NDA playbook, the surveillance protocol with my name on it. Every word felt like fire in my throat. But I spoke them anyway, because this wasn't just my story anymore. Then came cross-examination. Margaret's lead attorney stood. Tall, smooth, viper's smile. He flipped open a folder and began. A mess. Emily, you claim you were fired in retaliation. Is that correct? Yes. And yet, isn't it true that you had 2 warnings on file? For speaking up in meetings, I said. For suggesting safer workplace policies. He raised an eyebrow. And isn't it true that you had an inappropriate emotional outburst during a team debrief? I called out Michael for harassing an intern. He smiled. Your version of events, of course. Then he went in harder. Questioned my motives, my memory, my credibility. He implied I was emotional, vindictive, possibly mentally unstable. It was textbook gaslight. Death by 1,000 polite cuts. But I didn't break. Because the truth doesn't need to shout. It just needs to stand its ground. And then, just as the prosecution prepared to introduce the email chain, Margaret stood up. Her lawyer tried to stop her. But she rose anyway. Calm. Controlled. She looked at the judge. Your Honor. She said, I would like to speak. A murmur rippled through the room. The judge frowned. You understand this is under oath? I do. Margaret turned, faced me, and said, clearly, I take full responsibility for everything that happened at Novacor. But Michael Raines was never acting alone. And I was protecting someone else. The room froze. The judge banged the gavel once. Order. But no one moved. Not the jurors. Not the attorneys. And definitely not me. Because in that moment, I realized we hadn't reached the top yet. There was someone above Margaret. And the real battle was just beginning. Margaret's words rang in my ears long after the courtroom emptied. I was protecting someone else. Who? Who could be so powerful, so untouchable, that even the CEO of a billion-dollar company would fall on the sword for him? Back at the co-working space, we gathered like generals before a final war. Jenna was already on her laptop, searching every board member, stakeholder, and senior partner Novacor had ever listed. Then Camille said something we hadn't considered. What if he's not listed at all? We paused. Because real power, the kind that operates above the law, it doesn't wear a name tag. Zoe pulled up an archived PDF from an old investor pitch deck, one that had been quickly pulled offline a year ago. There was a name. Not a public-facing executive. Not even listed on the company's current site. But buried in the founding partners section. Nathaniel Greer. The moment we saw it, Jenna whispered, why does that name sound familiar? It should. Because Nathaniel Greer wasn't just a tech investor. He was a former federal advisor on cybersecurity. A media darling 10 years ago. A ghost billionaire now. No photos. No interviews. No digital footprint in the last 5 years. And yet, in every version of Novacor's founding, he was there. In the background. Holding shares. Pulling strings. Marissa, our attorney, confirmed it. He owns 11% of Novacore, she said. Through shell corporations and silent partnerships. I stared at the name on the screen. Nathaniel Greer. The man no one had seen. But everyone seemed to serve. We dug deeper. Through whistleblower forums. Through archived emails. Through documents Darren had handed off quietly just before leaving the country for personal reasons. And we found patterns. Greer was tied to the firm that wrote Novacore's original NDA templates, the law group that trained HR to silence complaints, a security firm known for digital suppression tactics, including reputation risk RESP. Aunts. He didn't just fund the system. He designed it. The deeper we went, the colder it got. There were rumors, whispers, stories of women who came close to exposing Novacore and then simply disappeared from the industry. Not killed, just erased. Jobs dried up. References vanished. Credentials mislabeled. We found 3 LinkedIn profiles that hadn't been updated in over 6 years. Each belonged to someone who'd once tried to speak up. And that's when we knew. Margaret wasn't the boss. She was the face. The real power was in the shadows. Do we go after him? Rachel asked. The room fell silent. Because going after Michael was risky. Taking on Margaret was dangerous. But Greer? He was a god in a world that worshipped silence. Jenna looked at me. And I nodded. We don't stop now. We knew we couldn't subpoena him. Couldn't trace him. Couldn't even find a recent photo. But we could do something better. We could bait him. We launched a campaign. Not about Novacore. Not about Margaret. This time, it was about Greer. We called it #TheSilentStake. Jenna dropped the first tweet. Behind every monster is the one who built the cage. We're not done yet. Are you watching, Mr. Greer? It went viral in under 3 hours. We posted documents, memos, old video clips with blurred faces and suspicious names redacted. Except one. NG. The internet did the rest. Reddit sleuths. Data miners. Anonymous leaks. Within 48 hours, someone posted a screenshot from a private investor retreat in the Maldives. And there he was. Nathaniel Greer. Older. Thinner. Still hiding behind the same cold smile. The photos spread like wildfire. And then, an email. No subject. No name. Just a message. Congratulations. You've made your point. But if you continue, you won't like what happens next. We published it. The world went berserk. Now Greer had made a mistake. He left a footprint. The government opened an inquiry. News anchors began calling him the puppet master. Margaret was subpoenaed again. But this time, she didn't protect him. She flipped. In a televised deposition, Margaret gave everything. Greer created the risk protocol. He instructed us to bury complaints. He told me, don't fix the fire alarm. Make sure no one hears it. It was over. Almost. Because before the trial could close, one more thing happened. Emily received a letter. Handwritten. Untraceable. Inside was a single sentence. They might forget him. But they'll never forget you. And a photo. Of her father's house. The threat was real. They knew where my family lived. Where I went. Where I could be silenced. And I had a choice. Back down and protect the people I love. Or finish what I started and risk it all. I chose both. I released a final statement. If anything happens to me or my loved ones, there are 200 gigabytes of files ready to go live, worldwide. I don't want revenge. I want accountability. And I won't go quietly. It wasn't just a message. It was a shield. 3 days later, Greer resigned from all known companies. 2 of his shell firms were dissolved. The SEC opened an investigation. Interpol flagged his movements. He disappeared. But this time, so did his power. The lawsuit settled. $37 million in total damages. Public apology. Policy reform. 5 resignations. 2 arrests. But more than that, silence finally shattered. Novacor wasn't just forced to change. They became the warning sign for an entire industry. I didn't take the payout. Instead, I helped launch a fund for whistleblowers. Jenna became a public speaker. Zoe went back to law school. Rachel started a nonprofit. And me? I wrote this story. Not for revenge. Not for fame. But so the next Emily, the one sitting in a glass tower right now, afraid to speak, would know she's not alone. This was never just about justice. It was about breaking the system and building something better. From the ashes, they tried to erase her. They tried to silence her. They tried to make her the villain in her own story. But instead, she became the voice of thousands. Not because she wanted to be a hero, but because no one else stood up. And sometimes, that's how change begins. Not with a microphone, but with a whisper that refuses to die. If you've ever been afraid to speak up, if you've ever been told it's not that bad, or if you've ever felt alone in a system built to break you, remember this. You're not weak for surviving. You're powerful for still being here. And maybe, just maybe, your story is the next one that will change the world. If this story moved you, share it. Speak up. Comment below. Let your voice be heard. Because the silence ends with us.